Expedition 44. Welcome this morning. We are on a series on Revelation, and this has probably been a series that we've read more traditional books for than any other series we've done. Well, Matt reads a lot of books for every series, but I'll say I've read more books for this one than any other one. And because it's Revelation, there's going to be just a plethora of stuff out there, and I'm going to say a lot of it is like terrible reading. Mm-hmm. And so you really got to be careful what you read. And I'd say the average layperson has not a very good way to determine what to read and what not
what's
to.
Good, what's bad.
Yeah, it's hard for most of our listeners, watchers, to kind of say, how do you know what to read? And so today we're going to kind of go through this a little bit, and I'm going to start with my favorite Revelations books. I've got a short stack for you today, and so unfortunately I might not be able to find my very favorites, but when you think of Revelation, you might think of things like Tim LaHaye. He's the, kind of the end time specialist, has some of those Left Behind series books. This is one of his. Here's another one, Frank Peretti, This Present Darkness, Piercing the Darkness. Another one of my favorites is The Late Great Planet Earth. I think a lot of people get a lot of their escapism, futurism, rapture ideas from books like that. Now, here's a more recent one. This is The Mystery of the Shemitah by Jonathan Cahn, and he's also the same person that wrote The Harbinger. He's been on all kinds of talk shows, Christian, non-Christian, things like that. Now, I'm a little tongue-in-cheek, and I think everybody gets that. They're my favorite because
they're the bad ones.
They're the bad ones. They're the ones I kind of laugh at over and over. And even my kids have gotten to the point where, like, when somebody's talking about Left Behind or whatever, they're laughing. They watch the TV versions, and they literally, like, watched it as if it was a comedy show. I mean...
So I think the important takeaway here is people see you actually have books from the other side.
Yeah.
It's like we're reading both sides here, and we're weighing the evidence and weighing the cultural significance of some of these. And so it's not like we're, dyed in the wool just this way because we're in an echo chamber. Now, we read from all sides of the spectrum.
That's a great point. And I'm even going to say there's some books that take positions like I don't agree with Jonathan Cahn really at all on his positions. Yet in this book, his Daniel stuff going up to 70 AD is actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like he goes through the stuff in Daniel being a former rabbi, might still be a rabbi. I'm not sure where that falls on there, but his understanding of up till 70 AD is actually pretty good. So I'm not sure I got much takeaway from these two, but some of these that I don't really agree with and I don't really suggest people read, I'm actually still taking away some things. It's kind of like goes to that notion that like I've never heard a sermon I haven't taken something away from. Yeah. Even if it's horrible, I usually find that the Holy Spirit gives me something in there to take away. So let's kind of do away with New York Times bestsellers on what the end times tribulation might look like and get to a better picture of that.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through some of the books that I've been working through as we've been doing this series on the 7 churches in Revelation. And so the first one kind of on my stack is this one that I've found. It was recommended actually by Ben Witherington, which is the Sermons of the 7 Churches in Revelation. It's a commentary and guide. It's by Jeffery A.D. Weima, and I've really enjoyed this. He gives a whole lot of cultural perspective of what the background was, and you can't tell whether he's a early date or a late date guy. Like he kind of mixes it, kind of like what we've been doing in our series. But the thing I love is he goes through the language. He goes through exegetically through the passage and the whole layout. But the thing I love at the end is he actually kind of preaches a sermon at the end of each chapter on what the cultural and present significance would be to us based on the meaning of that passage. Yep. And so this is a book that I've really loved as I've been studying this passage, these passages. The next one is called Understanding the 7 Churches of Revelation. It's by Dr. Jonathan Welton, not to be confused with Walton.
Yes. And right now where we're at, we're going through the 7 Churches of Revelation for our church series, so this book kind of hits it right on the head.
Yeah, and his is really good. He is an early date guy.
Yep.
And so he takes a lot of the church stuff. Now, from what I've read of him, he is kind of a full preterist, I think.
Yeah.
But he brings out a whole lot of really good background information and application within, especially the age of Nero and Vespasian and Titus and all that within the churches in Asia Minor. So I
now,
really
some
like
people aren't going to like this, that we're suggesting a book that could possibly be by a full preterist, because a full preterist camp is kind of considered the crazies, and I've actually even referred to them as crazies before. But I will say, you can be a full preterist and not be totally nuts.
Yeah,
and so,
and I don't think he is.
Yeah, and so I'll just give you a snapshot of that. As most people know, towards the end of the 70 AD thing, the Jews are going to retreat to Masada, and by the time the Romans get there, they're all dead. They essentially look like they committed suicide. And I'm just going to throw this out there: what if they didn't?
Yeah.
What if Christ actually did come back and take them to the heavens? And so that's the full preterist camp that you get to, and you go like, it could have happened that way. We don't know. Does Jesus say he's only ever in the Bible that there's going to be, one time that he takes people back? The Old Testament's a shadow of the New Testament. Did God come and take people to the heavens in the Old Testament? Yeah. It looks like he did. We have stories of like Elijah and things like that.
Yeah,
so you can take a full preterist view that Christ actually did come back and bring people to the heavens, possibly of Masada, closer 70, after 70 AD, things like that, and not be crazy. But if you've never heard of any of this, it comes off as a crazy perspective. So anyway, Matt and I don't write anybody off. I mean, just because he might be a full preterist, this is one of our favorite books on it. He also, I think, has a D-Min instead of a PhD, and we still read it.
Yep. Yep. The next one is David deSilva, one of our favorite authors. Great with historical exegesis, historical context, especially cultural stuff. He's the guy that we kind of learned the three graces thing through. He's got one called Unholy Allegiances, which really goes into... but he's a late date guy, but he applies like a whole lot of the two kingdoms theology stuff. It's called the subtitle is Heeding the Revelation's Warning, which is really about the political allegiances to Rome versus the kingdom of God. And so it's great. It goes into like all the stuff with the coins we've been talking about in here, with pictures even. So if you like pictures, this is good picture book. This is a good book.
Now, most of the people we're mentioning, you'll probably have never heard of before. Even Khan, who's this bestseller, whatever. deSilva, however, is kind of a household name in theology. So he would probably be one of our maybe even top 5 go-to people. He's an excellent scholar, and this is actually pretty readable, so highly suggested.
Yeah, he's got 2 others that are a little deeper, Discovering Revelation, which is a newer one they came out with, and a more scholarly commentary on Revelation called Seeing Things John's Way, which is really good. Next one is by J. Nelson Kraybill, which is called Apocalypse and Allegiance, Worship, Politics, and Devotion in the Book of Revelation.
And we had Giles on the other day kind of talking about allegiance gospel again, and this kind of takes the same picture but directed towards Revelation.
Yep, and he does a lot of modern applications to this, to our political allegiances in this world. So that's a good one. Next one is a classic, Colin J. Hemmer, the letters to the 7 churches in Asia in their local settings. And so a lot of our...
so hold on, when you say classic, how old are we talking?
His lifespan was 1930 to 1987. And he wrote this a while ago. I don't know what the actual, copyright here. 1986.
So this one's interesting because most of you guys, if you follow us, I went to Moody and I kind of make a little bit of fun of the dispensationalism of it. But this book was written kind of during the dispensational boom, and so there's some applications to that.
Yeah, and he actually kind of through the historical aspects that he brings out, because this is really just a history book of the 7 churches in Asia Minor, looking at their cultural context and then going through that in the text. But a lot of his conclusions actually dispel dispensationalism based on the cultural settings and what they meant.
I'm going to say it was actually a very bold book. And so, I remember when I was in Bible college, I took a class on Daniel Revelations, and I took another couple on eschatology and, everything else. And they very carefully recommended this one because it was kind of
push back at him.
It's a little pushback. So, but very worth reading, especially if you're more into history than you are into eschatology. This is a great starting point.
Yeah. So the dispensational school usually likes to take the 7 churches as 7 ages within the church age dispensation, and this really disproves that. And so that's a good reason to read that. The next one is by Eugene. It's in the Interpretation Bible Commentary series on Revelation. really good Two Kingdoms theology, not Luther's Two Kingdoms theology, but the kingdoms of this world versus the kingdoms of God.
The only thing I'm going to be careful on in this one is you have to have a pretty good understanding of Revelation before you read this, or you're going to kind of be like, what's he talking about?
Yeah. So he does a good job of looking at language, looking at interpretive methods, and also dispels a lot of the myths of dispensationalism. A favorite of mine that I've been reading, it was recommended by a guy that I have met who's actually pretty close to Covenant Theological, lives pretty close to Covenant Theological Seminary. His name is Josh Yoder. He has a podcast that I have really been enjoying as I've been studying this, called Unbinding the Bible, so we recommend that to you guys. But he recommended this book called A Slaughtered Lamb by Gregory Stevenson. We quoted from it in our last episode. He had a really good quote on following the pattern of Christ, and that's what his whole book here is. It's Revelation and Apocalypse of the response to evil and suffering. So he really deals with the problem of evil within Revelation and the problem of empire as evil. And it's a really, really great book. I've just really enjoyed it, and the insights that he's brought on the problem of evil and how Revelation addresses the problem of evil.
So I actually haven't read all these books, and this is one I haven't read, and I'm looking forward to. So Josh, thanks for the recommendation. The next one is probably my go-to Revelation book, what I think is probably, if you're going to read one, this is probably the direction I'd send you.
Reading Revelation Responsibly by Michael Gorman. It's one we've mentioned over and over throughout our podcast already so far. Uncivil worship and witness following the Lamb into new creation.
If we had to say we hit closest to one book in this pile, this is probably where it's at. However, there's still some places that I would say we kind of vary a little bit.
So Gorman takes a late date. He actually takes the 666 and points it to Domitian, which he has some interesting way of doing that, which we don't necessarily disagree with or agree with, but we just find that it's interesting. We take an early date, as you've known if you've been following our stuff.
Although if you get into it, it's an early late date sort of.
It's
already written early, but then all this late stuff makes sense too.
So Gorman takes more of the Domitian era persecution, stuff like that, political allegiances. The application of this book is absolutely amazing, though, for modern readers. So that's one we highly recommend for a better framework on how to read Revelation, which kind of dispels the futurism stuff, puts it in the present of how we should actually live out discipleship.
Now, if you're really paying attention, you'll notice that we started technically with a commentary, and we're going to end with a commentary.
So this one is called The Triumph of the Lamb. It's by Dennis E. Johnson. A really good commentary on Revelation, recommended by a lot of people. He doesn't necessarily put his foot down on either side of the dating thing, just brings out the pastoral aspects of allegiances to the kingdom of God and how Christ has triumphed, brought about new creation, is bringing about new creation through his church.
So the question is, are these the only ones that we recommend? So, there's a lot of book on Revelation out there.
I love also G.K. Beale's huge commentary. I don't have it in print form. I have it in Logos Bible software, which we both love that type of software. G.K. Beale's commentary is like kind of second to none, even though he does a good job of laying out both perspectives of the early date and the late date. He kind of sides with the late date, but the linguistic stuff in that commentary is absolutely amazing.
And if you don't have expensive software like Logos, you can also just use Bible Hub. Bible Hub is free, and it's actually got some really, really great stuff. In fact, when I'm just in church following along, my go-to is just to usually kind of pick up an interlinear from Bible Hub, and it's a great follow along.
The app is free.
Read the Greek, read the Hebrew, everything else. Blue Letter Bible again, has some stuff. Sometimes I scratch my head at, but for the most part, it's recommended. He does a really great job. I guess there's more than one author, but several of them.
Classic commentaries and
classic commentary is really good, and most of their stuff on Revelation is actually pretty good as well. So,
well, thanks for joining us with some book reviews on some of the stuff we're reading right now, some of the stuff that we don't necessarily agree with as well. But yeah, check out some of these authors. Check out some of these books. Dive deeper with us and continue to love and serve the Lord. May God bless you and keep you.